and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. All the action was in the Senate during week 9 of the legislative session. We start with a stunner. The bill that would have overhauled the way the state funds public school districts crashed into a wall on Thursday. It's called the Mississippi Uniform Per Student Funding Formula Act of 2018. Senators voted 27 to 21 to send it back to committee, which effectively kills it. Democratic Senator Hob Bryan of Amory led the fight against the bill. Here are a few highlights of his speech from the Senate floor.
They are comparing a promise 6 years in the future to the amount of appropriation last year. So when you look at all these numbers, this is what they're promising you in 6 years. How on earth we decided we were going to take a formula off the books based on a promise of an appropriation level 6 years from now, I don't know. 1/4 of the districts will get less state money 6 years from now than they're getting right now, assuming enrollment is constant. I want to say that again and let that sink in. 1/4 of the districts in this state will be getting less money 6 years from now than they got now. Do you think 1/4 of the school districts in this state are getting too much money? Why is it now, if this bill is such a great idea, that there's such great difficulty in getting votes? Why do they have to keep calling in people and twisting arms? And I don't have to go into all that. Y'all know what's been going on as well as I do. Is that any way to run a process? We've never operated this way. We've never failed to take into consideration the concerns of individual senators. And we don't have to start doing it now. What we need to do is send this bill back to the committee and let's see if they can.
5 minutes is up. 5 minutes has been requested. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, barely. Senator Bryan, you are recognized.
And let's see if they can't come up with a formula that doesn't pit senator against senator, that doesn't pit school district against school district, that doesn't have to put you in a position of explaining why you voted to take money away from some of your school districts. And let's see if we can't come up with something that has broad-based support like an education funding proposition ought to.
By a vote of 27 yeas, 21 nays, the motion passes.
The bill appeared to be on track to replace the current funding formula, the Mississippi Adequate Education Program. It would have set the base cost for educating each student at $4,800. More money could be given for students with specific needs like special education, English learners, and gifted. Then over the next 5 years, there would be an increase of $107 million in district funding overall. Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves was not pleased with the Senate's vote to recommit the bill.
The fact of the matter is, kids across Mississippi lost today because the Democrats block voted, because they're more interested in saving a political tool than they are doing what's best for their school districts. And while I find that terribly unfortunate, I will tell y'all, I'm not going to quit fighting for Mississippi kids. I'm not going to quit fighting for Mississippi Republican kids who come from Republican families, and I'm not going to quit fighting for kids who come from Democrat families, because our job in this building is to do what's right. The fact of the matter is the Mississippi Adequate Education Program is inequitable. You've got some students in certain school districts getting $1,200, $1,300 per kid if they're in gifted, and then you go to DeSoto County and those kids are getting $600 per kid if they're in gifted. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or even a legislator to figure out that that ain't fair and that ain't right. And so I can assure you that I'm going to continue to fight for Mississippi kids. I'm going to continue to fight to get more money in the classroom and less money in the district office. And we're going to keep on keeping on to make sure we are successful at doing that.
House Speaker Philip Gunn calls the Senate's decision to kill the education funding formula rewrite disappointing. He released this statement. He says, quote, "Those senators who did not support the legislation failed to do what is best for the students. They let the politics of public education get in the way of our students. We can argue about the dollar amount all day long, but no one can refute that this was a better way to fund education," end quote. We spoke with Senate Education Committee Chairman Gray Tollison, a Republican from Oxford, and Democratic Senator Solly Norwood of Jackson to get their reaction.
Wow. It was fantastic. I think that this is the way public policy is supposed to be crafted. We had Democrats and Republicans working together, and that's the way public policy is supposed to be. So really it's a victory for public education in the state of Mississippi. Basically what it is, there's still too many uncertain, there are too many factors that hadn't really been vetted. When you talk to the superintendents and you talk to the school leaders across the state, it's just, it's just too problematic. And once we pass that and go into law, then it's too late for us to go back and change it at that point. We have to wait till we come in next year. And I just think that it's too problematic. So the only thing we're asking is give us an opportunity if we want to make changes for the better, let's take time and go through it, get with the general public, and just work through it. I don't think it was a vote against public schools at all. Only thing we want to do is do right by public schools, do right about our children. That they don't have they have a future, but they don't have a stake in making these decisions. And so we need to make decisions that's in the best interest of our children, the best interest of public education.
I'm disappointed because I do believe in this legislation. And I'll say this, didn't get a chance to say this. The House did a great job of preparing this legislation. Chairman Bennett and the other House members involved, the Speaker, I think he was the lead author. I went through this and it was very well prepared, and had a chance to read it. I wish others had a chance to read it, or wish they had read it and understood it and talked to House members about it. It is a good piece of part of education reform that we've been working on for the past 7 years. It will help Mississippi raise student achievement. It's about the students, and the fact that we are doubling the amount of money for low income, which we need to do, is a great thing. And now, hopefully we can come back and focus on that. But we're providing a high school weight. I think it's more transparent, more predictable. There are a lot of good positive things. And as I said on the floor, we continue under the old MAP to fund $450 million with a 60-year-old program, the teacher units, and it's uneven across the state. And we've got to change that, and it needs to be changed. And I think going forward, it will at some point. Today just wasn't the day.
One of the most vocal parent groups is celebrating the defeat of the education funding rewrite. The executive director of the Parents Campaign, Nancy Loom, sent us this statement. She says, quote, "Regarding our state's school funding law, we at the Parents Campaign would like to be a part of any future effort to improve it, but that process needs to be open and inclusive. The resulting legislation must provide adequately and equitably for our children's public schools," end quote. The recent deadly school shooting in Parkland, Florida, prompted the Senate to amend House Bill 1083, which would let a person with a concealed carry permit take a gun onto a school campus or into a county courthouse. The amendment calls for authorizing schools to have trained teachers carry guns in class. It would be optional, not mandatory. We spoke with Democratic Senator Derek Simmons of Greenville and the bill's author, Republican Senator Briggs Hopson of Vicksburg, about the idea.
This is an option for school districts. This is not mandatory. It doesn't say to arm teachers. It just says if they want to create a program where they could have an employee, it may be a coach, it may be a principal, it could be a teacher. They may not want to do it, and that's fine. We're not advocating that anyone take this measure. We just want to make sure that our school districts, colleges, universities, private schools, anyone that's a school in the state of Mississippi has the option available to them to look at everything that's possible to keep something like Parkland from happening again. I don't want to see something like that happen again in Mississippi, and I want everyone to know that this is not done with any kind of joy or glee. It's done with sadness that we have to pass a bill like this. It really is a sad testament to where we are, that we've got to look at these measures, but things are a lot different in the country now. I told someone earlier, when I went to high school back in the 80s, people used to drive to school with guns in the back of their pickup truck, right there in the window of the truck. Guns were prevalent. They were prevalent then, and unfortunately we've got bad people that are using them to create havoc in our country, and this is just one little step to help out in that endeavor to keep those bad people from getting to our honest, law-abiding citizens and particularly our students.
Our teachers should be focused on teaching our children. Our children should be focused on going into a safe academic environment to learn. We should not be considering legislation, even though it's optional, that would allow guns in schools. It's disheartening, considering what is happening around the nation, that in Mississippi, again, we're doing something that we should not be doing regarding children in our schools. I can see a situation where a teacher may get upset with another teacher, and if that teacher is armed, a shooting could occur in a school setting. I can see a situation where even though the bill makes it optional for teachers to have guns, you create a mindset where children may try to have guns and try to bring the guns into schools. So you are basically just creating an environment where you say to Mississippians that it's okay to have guns in schools.
Joyce Helmick is president of the Mississippi Association of Educators. She says MAE vehemently opposes the measure to arm teachers. Quote, "We should let the teachers teach and let trained law enforcement personnel provide protection to our children, teachers, and school administrators. Teachers are already charged with so many responsibilities outside their roles as educators. The idea that they should now be asked to serve as armed guards is ridiculous." End quote. There are bills on both sides still alive that would direct where the money Mississippi is receiving from the BP oil spill settlement would go. Mississippi will receive $40 million a year for the next 15 years, in addition to the $150 million the state has already received. A Senate version calls for all money received to go to projects on the Gulf Coast. Bills from the House would set up 10 accounts based on geographical regions and population to spread the money for projects across the state. There would also be an account reserved for the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund. The Mississippi Development Authority would administer the money. The Senate also passed legislation out of committee this week that would make Mississippi's abortion law the strictest in the nation. House Bill 1510 calls for shortening the window for when the procedure can be done from 20 weeks to 15 weeks. Exceptions would be made if the life of the fetus or the mother were in danger. Mississippi and North Carolina already have the nation's toughest abortion law at 20 weeks gestation. The bill remains on the Senate calendar and now faces a floor action deadline next Wednesday. Now let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of the Clearwater Group. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney with the Beria Jones Law Firm and a former member of the House. Gentlemen, good to have you back with us, as always, on that issue. Let's talk first about the education funding rewrite. Brandon, what happened? Was Hob Bryan just that convincing that those Republicans were willing to change sides and vote against vote in favor of it being recommitted?
Senator Bryan was focused and articulate, and obviously he has been beating the drum against this bill for some time now. He's one of the original authors of the current formula, and so this is something that's been important to him for decades, literally. And so he did a good job. He did a good job of creating space for a bipartisan vote, which is not something that Democrats, frankly, do well consistently over at the legislature. And so to be able to keep Democrats focused and to invite some Republicans to join in that vote, I think politically speaking was pretty masterful. From a policy standpoint, you know, I spoke with Hob last night after the vote, and he recognizes this issue is not over. Proposals will still come back, maybe not this session, but certainly in sessions to come. And what he hopes for, and I think he's sincere in this, and he said this on the podium, is that maybe we can have a few more folks at the table during the building process, maybe in the committee process, maybe have Hob, since he was a part of writing the original formula, there at the table. I think he's earned that. I think he's earned a spot. But yeah, you said, how did it happen? I don't think that the folks who voted in favor of recommittal, number one, all knew that there was going to be a motion to recommit when they went in there yesterday. And I don't know that all of them knew which way they were going to vote until they were asked to. So it was not one of those moments that was choreographed. I think it was very much organic and happening in real time.
Austin?
I mean, listen, now, this is a huge vote. It's a tremendous loss for those who believe this is the right way to handle education funding with a new formula. And I'm a believer of that. And I don't want to, there's no way to place blame on one particular person or group, but this is a troubling loss. And I know that we could sense that the lieutenant governor felt that way. I sensed that I felt that with his comments that we showed earlier, that he was visibly upset. He and Gray Tollison have worked very hard on this bill. Obviously, the speaker and the leadership of the House have worked tremendously hard on this. Obviously, they got it out of the House and it died in the Senate. This issue's not going away. I don't know if will it come back this session. I don't know. That would be very difficult, I think, for them to be able to recall something back up on the calendar. You would know better than I, being a former member.
Yeah, they'd have to suspend the rules. It'd be tough.
That's a 2/3 vote, I
That's
think.
right.
Yeah, so if you lost this vote, even though there were 4 Republicans who either didn't vote or were not there, and obviously there were 8 Republicans who voted to kill the bill, essentially, by sending it to committee. So, but we'll see.
Well, what do you expect to see from the lieutenant governor about this moving forward?
I don't know. I mean, listen, maybe the bigger question is, what do I expect to see from the governor? If I'm the governor of Mississippi, and this is a big issue to me, do I call a special session on this? I have heard no one say that. Obviously, we've seen governors in the past. We've seen the current governor who says this is a big issue. The legislature was not able to get it done, to call a special session. He could call a special session tomorrow if he wanted to. He could call a special session after the legislature has sine died and gone back home early April. That's what I would be trying to focus on is, can we, I mean, this is a big issue. As a Republican, I'm taking my at-issue hat off. As a voter, a constituent, a taxpayer, and a conservative, I'm mad about this. I think this was the right way to handle education funding, and it died. And I'm very disappointed. I appreciate the leadership of both the House and the Senate to try to make this happen. But I'm Gray Tollison used the word disappointed. I'm quite frankly pretty mad and frustrated about it.
And what about those Republicans who decided to effectively kill it, as you said? Will there be repercussions for them? I don't know. I mean, that's an inner Senate issue. I don't know. I doubt it. But I mean, I think they need to give some explanations of why they didn't. And I don't think it just works to say, well, my superintendents, I didn't hear from anybody. I mean, you're there to lead. Okay? And you're there to lead, obviously, for your district, and you have to vote the conscience of your district. But sometimes you got to, and this is how I see this, sometimes you have to see this from a broader brush. What is best for all the school kids in the state of Mississippi? And I know that's difficult for some members of the House or members of the Senate because they have to focus on their district. But sometimes you got to look a little bit broader than that. So, Brandon, what needs to be done with the bill now to win Democratic support and to win back those Republicans who effectively killed it?
Well, the job that Lieutenant Governor Reeves and that Chairman Tollison did was not all lost, because they've clearly convinced my friend over here that it was the right way to go. The problem is the money was not there. I mean, what has been said for a week now, maybe longer, is that whenever they would put out comparisons to show what money this new bill would mean and how it would compare to the existing formula, they never would release that number that showed this formula versus the existing formula. What they would show was this year's appropriation, what we all have said, is low. It's not where we want it to be. No one's holding out this year as some type of sterling achievement, and they were comparing that to where this new bill was going. Well, Brian, sharp guy, did some math, and by the time he had done extrapolated out all the numbers associated with the new formula, he figured out, heck, even if we did our level best, in 6 years, 25% of the school districts would be getting underfunded under the existing formula. So at the end of the day, there's a math problem here. If you want to know why they lost, at the end of the day, Republicans didn't vote for this because the math does not work. It's not a good formula. It's less money into public schools which some of us are, you want to talk about fury. The folks who were there, the advocates who were there, the school teachers who were there, the parents who were there, they're angry about the idea that we're trying to negotiate down from an already bad position in public education funding. We want to see the existing formula fully funded, and we haven't seen that. And this was a bad replacement for that.
Yeah, but see, I just disagree with Brandon because under this administration, under this group of leaders, and I've said this before, and you know where I'm going, they put more money into K-12 than any group in the past. And I realize you're always going to be more money because of different things, but they said this time and time again. This formula would bring forth more money than it had last year. I don't know the details of it. I don't. I mean, I'm not paid to go down there. I'm not a member of the legislature. But I mean, I trust them when they say that. But I understand where you're coming from on that. But listen, MAAP has only been funded fully twice in 20 or 25 years since it's been there. So.
Yeah, and I was a member of the legislature when we did it the second time, and I'll tell you, it's not a formula whose time has passed. It's a formula that can still work for Mississippi schools, and in those moments when we have funded it, we've actually seen that. But perhaps I mean, look, I think that to answer your original question, what would it take for Democrats to look at this thing seriously? They would have to be convinced that Republicans aren't simply looking for a way to be able to say we fully funded education and it not mean anything in the classroom. Because that's the fear. The fear here is that this has become a political football that Republicans are sick of running against, and so they wanted to find a formula that allowed them to say what they wanted to say politically.
I got to make one point here, because Brandon's right on this, okay? I mean, this is a time when you got to say, look, we're going to get Republicans and Democrats to the table. Republicans are in control. They're in control. They're in charge. They get more seats at the table. That's just a fact. That's what the decision the voters said. Let's find the right way to do this together and put more money into the program. But let's make sure we're spending it the right way, and most importantly, ensuring that locals continue to have control.
All right, let's move on to politics in terms of the Senate election that is coming up. Chris McDaniel has entered the race, of course, and it will be challenging incumbent Roger Wicker. If history is our guide, in particular his race against Thad Cochran, which was pretty contentious, if we have that again, how can you keep a race like that from destroying the Republican Party?
The Republican Party will always survive bad candidates, bad races, bad election cycles, minorities, majorities, superpowers, a small contingency of rabble-rousers. They're always going to, and so will the Democrat Party. That's just the two-party system that we have here in the country. I mean, listen, obviously this is going to be a very exciting primary. We will see eventually where Senator McDaniel ends up. I think there's a lot of rumors about what will end up happening with Senator Cochran. Will he retire? Will he? I hope he stays all the way through his term in 2020. But if we did get news that Senator Cochran was stepping down and there was a vacancy, I mean, Senator McDaniel was on the record with one of the local reporters saying, I would absolutely consider getting into that open Senate race and withdrawing from the race against Senator Wicker.
Now, why would that be more attractive to him than the race against Wicker?
Well, it would be much more attractive because here you have Roger Wicker, who's a two-and-a-half-term incumbent with $5 million in the bank, with the endorsement of the President of the United States, the governor of our state, 96% conservative voting record, 96% voting with the president. It's much easier if you're in a race where there's no senator who's got all of those things for Chris McDaniel.
He would be going up against whoever the governor appoints to replace Cochran should Cochran step down.
And maybe some other candidates.
And that might be an easier race.
It'd be a much easier race for Chris McDaniel. I still think he would probably be an underdog in that race because you'd have probably a strong candidate that was appointed by Governor Bryant. But I just wouldn't cross that off the list that Senator McDaniel may do. But he and I aren't talking a lot, so I'm not quite sure.
And Brandon, are Democrats licking their chops here? I mean, what's the mindset among the Democrats?
It would take a pretty dumb Democrat to be licking their chops about an election in Mississippi. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do. If anybody doesn't have a good injection of humility on our side, they're just not paying attention.
But they have to be looking at what happened in Alabama, where you have enough discord within one party that maybe you can profit from that.
Yeah, part of the way that we win in the Deep South at this particular moment is for Republican dysfunction to have part of the narrative. And so there's no question about it. And one thing I noticed early in this campaign, Austin was a part of Senator Cochran's campaign, and for all the talk about what a vicious campaign it was, Senator Cochran's team was pretty traditional in its approach early on. The messaging was not like take the paint off the walls kind of severe. It was talking about a guy who had a proven track record and talking about actual issues. What I'm noticing early on in this race, it's a little bit unique, is immediately I saw both campaigns sniping at each other, whether it was on social media or today in the form of billboards going up across the state. We heard about a $250,000 PAC buy for the McDaniel campaign, which I'm sure we'll all be experiencing at our mailboxes and elsewhere. This looks like it's getting hot a little bit earlier than I recall last time around, which you remember how hot it got last time. So that's certainly, from a Democratic perspective, you look at that and you think that may create opportunity. Because if you have two guys getting personal, going against each other, fighting over who's the most conservative, and let me tell you who's never won a battle over who's the most conservative: the voters. The Republican Party has this little food fight over, I'm more conservative than you, I think everybody should have a gun, I think babies should have guns, I think school teachers should have guns. And then we end up with policy that's just kind of silly and self-serving. It opens up an opportunity for a candidate like my law partner, and people who watch the show know I'm fairly biased in this race, Representative David Berria, to give voters hopefully a true choice, an actual option in this campaign to speak to some of the kitchen table issues that we feel like are affecting the state.
Well, it's going to be a very exciting year in politics. We have a contested third congressional district race with frontrunners like Whit Hughes and Michael Guest and State Senator Sally Doty, who are running, and we even have Sheila Ward's husband who's running. I think I can't decide if he's from Lauderdale County or Beverly Hills, California.
There will be plenty for us to talk about on At Issue in the coming weeks. Thank you both as always, and we thank you for joining us on At Issue. We're out of time. You can watch the program online, mpbonline.org/issue.